the other part is probably gonna make y'all mad to get into the reason why it was never executed. So here is the first March on Washington.
Seasoned labor organizer and socialist A. Philip Randolph proposed a March on Washington in 1941 that would change the entire trajectory of treatment of African Americans. No, I'm not talking about the March on Washington pulled off by Randolph, Bayard Rustin, and Dr. Martin Luther King over 20 years later. This March on Washington was more of a movement because, in the end, the march itself didn't actually have to happen. Well, not yet anyway. The March on Washington movement was the most militant black political operation in the early 1940s. It was created to call out segregation in the armed forces and demand President Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration treat black soldiers fairly. We'll learn more about this in an upcoming episode. But through his rallying and petitioning, Randolph made his plans to march on the Capitol public knowledge. As plans for the march raised concerns for race relations, it caught President Roosevelt's attention. On June 25, 1941, he signed Executive Order 8802, which prohibited, quote, discrimination in the employment of workers in defense industries or government because of race, creed, color, or national origin. The Roosevelt administration also brought forth the Fair Employment Practices Commission to address workplace discrimination. Another crusade black people took up during the 1940s was the Double V campaign, led by James G. Thompson. This newspaper marketing campaign was meant to remind Americans that while there was fighting against fascism going on abroad, there was a lot of work to do in the fight against racism here at home.
So, in a nutshell, the march didn't happen because the president put in, and as we've learned on this show, an executive order, which doesn't mean diddly squat, because you can't do anything. The only way you can even make that enforce that is to always be president. Soon as you out that office, soon as you're out. So sorry, but you fell for the okado. As for the second thing about the commission put together, well, welcome to 2023. We pretty much have figured out what commissions and committees and anybody else put together to research, look into, analyze, whatever keywords you want to use. I mean, jack squad if nothing's been done other than you still in 2023 researching, analyze, and look it up and all this other stuff you like to use. The March on Washington in 1941 didn't exist because you fell for the okado. And in the end, just to pinpoint, since everybody put this together, making everybody mad, the 1941 march didn't occur until 20 years later when you come to the realization that nothing changed in 20 years at that time. You still had to march. So, Tracy, you got anything other than I'm still mad?
I'm still mad. I'm still mad because I'm so like it's hard for me to put in words my anger. And I know if these was here, like, well, you should know. Yeah, I know. But this is anyway. I found the poem by Maya Angelou. And with your permission, I would like to read just a section because the poem is kind of long. At the end of the poem, she says, leaving behind the nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of a slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. That's the story of my life. I rise. I don't care what obstacles you put in front of me, I'm rising. You can say I can't go something. I don't have to get a seat at the table. I'll bring my own table. I don't need your permission, your nothing. I'm still gonna rise. So I'm gonna just keep saying I rise the whole evening because if I don't, this little mess that they went through, totally unnecessary. Unnecessary for us to go through it, for them to go through it. But still, I rise.
There has to be a way to turn the anger to effective action before it eats you up. For
I
me,
agree.
this show.
And for me, it's keep saying I rise.
Over and over again.
Over and over.
All right. Anna, you got everything before she rise up anymore?
You know what? Don't nobody got to do. Let me go get a cup of water.
Anna, please say something before she
It's
talks about.
now 80 years later.
But it's better than what it was.
Crumbs.
Oh.
Little bitty crumbs.
There was an incredible story in the Smithsonian Magazine, and if anybody has not seen it, I do really encourage you to go read it. Just the pictures of these two women who are still alive and with us today. It will tug at your heart, but it's also important to know. And go a little bit more into the Mel story and just how long that stuff was allowed there to rot. It's
Yeah.
Yep, and they weren't supposed to succeed. Like, yet they did. And now, Marlon, I'm not going to say, and they rose. But they did.
thank you.
Like water.
Water.
That's not a word.
Neither is
It's gotta be
wrestling.
up somewhere in the stratosphere by now.
Please, you don't made it to Mars. So that is our first hour. I appreciate everybody who stayed by. And if you learned absolutely anything from this show, I appreciate it. I also ask you to go deeper. That I'm just giving you snippets of history here and there of the treatment in World War II of Black Americans. There's always a deeper story behind anything that I put on this show. Always have been, always will be. All the way to the point of I can literally right now tell you what tomorrow's show is on. And it is on the 1941 almost March on Washington. We're going to take a deep dive into the setup, who was involved, and why it never happened. But I've already, spoiler alert on that one. But we'll get into a deeper dive on it tomorrow. Anybody that's new here, just to let you know that is our first hour of the show.